All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank everyone for joining here. Just to set the stage and give a little bit of an intro and background on myself, who's going to be at the wheel for today's webinar. I'm Rob Walsh, one of the co-founders here at VividCharts, and I run our sales and go-to-market, which includes meeting with a lot of ServiceNow customers and dissecting their reporting challenges and, providing tailored demos of our product as well as reporting training services, just to overall help ServiceNow customers solve reporting challenges in the platform itself. So the next slide here is going to give us an agenda, what we're going to cover in today's workshop, and then we'll dig into the content. So we're going to start just with a couple of slides here to give a little bit of an intro and a background on VividCharts, the company, set the stage with some of the common reporting roadblocks that I hear from ServiceNow customers on a daily and weekly basis. And then we're going to spend most of our time in the VividCharts product itself, building out some sample reports in ITSM as well as SPM. So in ITSM, we're going to start in SLA. We're going to do a little bit on incident and change trending. And then for the SPM section, we're going to focus on budget and duration variance reporting. All throughout the workshop, we're going to be providing tips on chart and table selection, query building, and different options there. But the Q&A is open in the webinar, so feel free to drop questions in as they come up, and we'll definitely try and get to them either in the moment or at the end. And then to close out, we'll just share some of the reporting or some of the resources we have available for more reporting training coming out of today. So a little bit of background on VividCharts. We are a ServiceNow advanced build partner, and we offer best-in-class reporting technology. So the product that we're going to be using for the workshop today is VividCharts, provided and lists in the ServiceNow store. But in addition to that, we provide training, implementation, and support services for customers for both our product as well as general ServiceNow reporting. And the overarching goal is really to drive more transparency with our data, drive better decision-making, and help our customers operate more efficiently and not get so bogged down in the volume of data that you have, but trying to translate that data into insights for your decision-making and for your executive teams. So just to set the stage with some of the most common reporting roadblocks that we hear from end users and ServiceNow customers, these are all very connected, but we'll break each down individually and kind of explain the connection here. So the first is going to be data source and chart selection. So often when I meet with a ServiceNow customer or an end user, they know what questions they want their data to answer, but what they're struggling with or trying to figure out is what is the best chart type, report type, or visualization to choose to answer that question effectively for my reporter dashboard? Or where do I actually find the data? What's the best data source? Is it a standard ServiceNow table? Do I need to go to a database view or a report source built and provided by our ServiceNow admin team? So just trying to find the right chart type or visualization and where to get the data to build that chart type is a common roadblock that we hear. And even after that, further navigating ServiceNow's data structures when you're building your query, if you need to dot walk, maybe you discover there's not a data point or a field on the table itself, so you have a data gap that's preventing you from answering the question that you want to answer. So, a lot of challenges come up as we're either selecting the data source or building our query and grouping the data for our report. And when we hit questions or roadblocks along the way, oftentimes our ServiceNow admin teams are the main outlet for questions, support, addressing data gaps that we might find, or maybe just getting the reporter dashboard built as a service. So, a lot of times ServiceNow admin teams are that primary outlet, but they're extremely busy and slammed resources. So often we find resource constraints from just getting overall support from a reporting perspective. So today's session is really going to be geared towards exploring some of the common tables, data structures, building some charts together, and then providing some resources for when you run into questions, some of the places that you can go in the moment, and some of the support services we offer on that topic. So with that, I'm going to flip the screen share over here, and we're going to jump over into the VividCharts product to start the workshop. And I'm going to go on my larger monitor. So I'll just go off video here and get my screens all set up. All right, perfect. So we're going to start today from the VividCharts application homepage, which is what we're looking at here. And from the homepage, you can see there's a ton of different reports and dashboards and different report types that I have built out in here. But I've created what we call a collection for today's webinar workshop. So if I click my collections here, I'll see my reporting workshop collection, and I'll click into that. And you'll see I have two filterable dashboards or slide decks here prepped, and one is going to be for the SPM portion and one is going to be for the ITSM. So to start, we're going to click the pencil icon on the ITSM reporting sample here, and that's going to take me into the VividCharts editor. And in the editor in VividCharts, we can build different report types, whether that's a dashboard, a automated slide deck, a scaled report, or if we want to incorporate some data from our other application, VividSheets in. But the editor experience is the same no matter what, and it's very drag and drop, easy to use. It's modeled more off of a PowerPoint editing experience where, we can put our logo here. We can drop free text in that we can come and update the title slide or add more context on who's presenting here. But as we, progress our way through the slides, you'll see we can also add chart types that are directly connected to our underlying data in ServiceNow to help visualize our data in various ways, and most importantly, answer questions with our data that can lead to insights and actions that we can take. And just to start here, we're going to build a number of charts from scratch today in the workshop. But to start, we're going to work off of this already completed slide that is focused on SLA. So this is a common report that we see a lot of interest in from our customers for SLA performance reporting. And just to set the stage with the structure here, when we're looking at SLAs, and these can be applied across different record types, whether it's incidents, requests, cases on the customer service side of things, often we want to break our SLAs down by the priority level. So on the left-hand side, we're just using in VividCharts the free text editor here to add priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 in a nice stack there. For SLA data, we also commonly want to look at either the current period that we're in, so we have current month here, or maybe we want to look at just the prior period, so last month. And often it's very useful to compare that for how we've performed year to date. So we have this slide structured to show us current month on the left-hand side, year to date broken down by priority. And the last breakdown that we have is breaking the SLAs down by the target type. So most commonly, that's going to be response and resolution. But in your ServiceNow environment, you might have different target types for time to assignment and other things. So these could be unique to your ServiceNow environment. But as we dig into the charts, we'll show some of the common fields that we can use to further break our SLA data down. And then the last piece structurally here is just what metrics are we looking at? We've got the hit rate here and the breach count. Those are our two metric types, and we're applying those for the response resolution in the current month and year to date. And if we just probe a little bit deeper into each of these, the hit rate is going to be the percentage of our SLAs that we actually achieved or met the defined SLA. The breach count is going to be the count of breached SLAs for that ticket type. And the two chart types that we're going to look at in the VividCharts chart library is the percentage score here, which is what we're using for the hit rate, and the score chart, which is just going to give us a count of the breached tickets. And we'll build some of these from scratch as well. But just to start, we're going to just look at each of these and open up the data menu here. So if I select this hit rate percentage chart, I see a data menu and a style menu up in the top left corner. If I click the data menu, I'll see a chart options tab and a data tab. So if I just flip one step back in the process to the data tab, I'll see the data source that we're working off of for this chart is the table. So this is a standard ServiceNow table, but we might also in other circumstances want to look at a database view, a report source, or potentially VividSheets, performance analytics, etc. So we're doing a table for this data source. And the table we're working off of is the task SLA. But if we needed to look at a different table, this is where we could search and find any of our out-of-the-box tables in ServiceNow or any custom tables we might have that are unique to our environment. Now, if we look at the chart options tab for the percentage score chart here, you'll see we have first conditions and second conditions up top. The first conditions, and so this is what we're going to use to build our percentage calculation. So the first conditions are going to apply to the numerator for our percentage calc, and the second conditions are going to be for the denominator. So up top, you'll see I have a few conditions already applied here, and the first one is going to be has breached is false, because we only want for the numerator to count the SLAs that we've actually achieved, so have not breached in this one. So we have has breached as false, and we're in the priority 1 level here in our report structure. So we have priority is 1, aka critical. So that's our numerator, and the denominator is just going to be the same thing, but we want to, divide the count of SLAs that hit against the total SLAs. So all of our critical or priority 1 SLAs here. And we'll come back in here to look at some other, avenues we have to build into our query here. But the last thing we'll just call out is the aggregate type. So we've got account selected here for both of these, but we also have different aggregate types available. And we'll use these later on in the workshop on the SPM side, but looking at averages, sums, etc. And so if I click save, that's just going to reload the data and give me the percentage calculation for what we're seeing here. Now you'll notice I didn't have any conditions for the response target type or the current month. So if we open up the data tab here and just open up those conditions again, this isn't a production environment, so we don't have the best data. So I didn't want to apply all of these to start and show some charts that didn't have any data. But if we just thought for a second, how might we build a query that's going to just show us the current month? We could come into our top conditions here and select the drop down here, and maybe we want to add created on as a condition. And once we've added that, we can use our date selector to either pick a specific date range period or use these more relative conditions over here to look at this month, last month, or a specific period of time. So for this section of the report, we would be looking at the current month. So we could choose this month. For the right-hand side of the report where we're looking at year to date, we could come down here to year and choose this year. So that's a common, query that we might want to run against some of these SLA charts that we're looking at. The other one that we might want to look at is isolating a specific SLA definition or an SLA target type. So if I add another condition here and click the drop down, I can scroll through and I can just look and eyeball if I have any fields on the SLA or the task SLA table to isolate a specific SLA definition or target type. And I do have SLA definition here. So if I click that, I can look at what options I have here, and it's a little bit limited. So I could come in here and search for response and see which specific SLA definitions I have available here. And I could make and choose those specifically. And that could be useful if you have specific SLA definitions to your organization that you want to isolate. But another option we might have is to pull up the SLA definition and dot walk to that record where we have the target field here. So I've dot walked to the SLA definition here. I've selected the target, and that's where I could isolate response or resolution as the target type to easily condition down for that. So we can just select response. Now I've done that for my top conditions here. If I wanted to easily take the conditions we've already built here and apply it to the bottom set of conditions here to create our percentage, we do have a nice shortcut in the product here. If I expand this and click this preview query, I have a snippet of text here that's called an encoded query that I could just highlight, copy, and paste down below. And that's just going to take my conditions that I have up here and exactly apply them down below. And once I've done that, I can just take the has breached flag off. And I don't think we're going to get any data here, but we'll go ahead and click save. And we don't have the data in the instance here, but that at least gives you a little bit of an insight into how we can explore the data on the SLA or the task SLA table, or dot walk to some of the related tables to get more isolated percentages for current month or a certain period of time or a certain target type, meaning response or resolution. So that covers the percentage score chart here, but we also have another score chart that's used throughout the rest of the report here, and that's going to be the breach count. And for this, we're actually going to use just a simple score chart in. We're going to use a simple score, but if we open the data menu up here, we can do the same exercise and see we're still pulling from the task SLA table here. But since this is a simple score, we're just going to have one set of conditions since we have a count that we're looking for. And the conditions here are going to look the same. So we could even use the same copy paste functionality to add those same conditions over here. But you'll see we just have has breached is true, because for this example, we want to see just the count of the breached SLAs. And then we have our priority is critical again. Now for this, we're working off of the same table as we were with the percentage score chart. So if we wanted to add some of those same conditions for the SLA definition or the SLA target type, we could use the same mechanisms here to, pull from or condition from the task SLA table, or to dot walk down to the definition to get that target type. So same set of options here as far as building our query out, and same set of options here down below just to give different aggregate types for counts, averages, maximum sums, etc. And last thing to call out, I didn't point this out, but this is a really important toggle here, the make clickable toggle. And this is really helpful from an end user perspective once you've actually built and distributed the report out. But it's also very useful when you're actually building your reports and building your queries. And I'll show you what I mean. So I have the make clickable toggle on for all of these chart types that we're looking at. And why that's important is if I go ahead and click save and go ahead and publish this report and go into the viewer. So we've gone from the editor to the viewer, and this is where once you've actually finished your report and you go to share it with a set of users, groups, or roles, they would land on this page. And if the make clickable toggle is turned on, if we click any of these charts individually, we have the ability to drill directly into the underlying ServiceNow list view. So I've clicked that score chart there to show the number of breached SLAs for priority 1. So once that loads, I'm going to get a list of those specific records, and you'll see some of these are incident tasks, some of these are HR tasks, which is another condition we could run to get more granular data. But once you're in this view, there's a lot of useful things that you can do to inform your query building or report building. And what I mean by that is we can look at the columns here, and you can see we're looking at the target column here. And so in your instance, if you're not sure if you have this defined, you could come into this list view using the click-through function and look, are we using the target column here? And it's a really useful way to just see what fields are actively being used in your instance to help you build better and more useful queries. So let's say if the target wasn't listed here, if we click this settings cog on the top right-hand corner, we'll get a list of all of the fields from that task SLA table. So we can see what fields we might have available. And if we select one of these or hold the command key or shift key and select multiple, we can move it over into our list view, click OK, and that's going to update and add those columns over here on the right-hand side. And once that loads, you'll see in the list if you have a value populated. So you'll see some of the columns here are going to show up empty for pause time or schedule. So it's a really easy way to figure out for your specific environment, are there certain fields that would be useful for your report building that aren't being used or aren't activated today? And that goes back to one of those common roadblocks. If you find, through this exercise and the click through, you find a column or a field that could be useful, but there's no values in it, that could be an opportunity to go work with your ServiceNow admin team or your partner of choice to figure out how to get that field turned on or configured so that it can help answer the question that you're looking to answer. Another really useful piece, once we're in the list view here, is we can add additional conditions here just to test different things out. And we can also copy encoded queries from this list view directly. So we showed earlier in the VividCharts UI how those encoded queries can be useful. Let's say we were testing and added a new condition over here, and we clicked run. That would show up in the breadcrumb trail here just below the condition builder. And I could right click that, copy the query, and then come back over into VividCharts, go into the editor, and using that same mechanism that we showed before, we could paste that encoded query into the preview query box here, and it would copy those conditions over. So just some nice shortcuts if you are building in VividCharts, and this is useful for out-of-the-box reporting as well, just to better understand your data gaps, the fields you have to work with, and a side benefit of being able to copy those encoded queries over if you're building in VividCharts. All right, so the last piece we're going to call out on this specific slide on SLA performance is the conditional coloring that we're seeing here. So we've focused on the data menu so far, but if we click another one of these charts that's colored red and open up the style menu, you'll get a certain set of style options available for you. And one of those is going to be the threshold. And this is where you can conditionally color charts based on what the data is actually showing in real time. So you'll see for this chart, we have a threshold in of 75. And if it's below that threshold of 75%, it's going to color the chart red. And we have the same thing done if I keep the style menu open and just click one of the other charts, it'll transfer that over and I can see we have an above threshold set for this one. So if it's above 75% or whatever our target is, it's going to color that chart green. And some of these style options are going to be dependent on which chart you've selected in the VividCharts chart library. And we'll see different options throughout the workshop today. But a lot of really nice extra functionality, just some pain points that we hear from ServiceNow customers on limitations and out-of-the-box reporting. We've added some of those in here. I did see one of the questions in the chat here, if we can replace the NaN percentage message with specific verbiage. So that's in there. On some charts, you can change the custom error message. So there's different little options there, and it depends on which chart type. So it does look like, let's see if we can do this, no data retrieved. And toggle that on. And that might be if the chart just errors out, not if it doesn't have any data. But depending on the chart, there's different options in that style menu to control different visual aspects of the chart. All right. So we've set the stage here with a report or a slide that's already put together and probed into some of the charts that we're using. Let's build a few charts from scratch in the ITSM space just to show a little bit more of the library and some different questions we might be able to answer with our data. And the first one we're going to look at is actually a new chart that we've added to the library, this latest release based on a customer request. And it's going to look at SLA percentages, but it's going to look at that in a trend over time. So if I click the VividCharts chart menu over here, and if I just search for percentage, you'll see we have a couple percentage-based charts here. The percentage score is what we were looking at before on the previous slide. We're going to look at the percentage vertical timed bar here first. And one of the things you'll notice is there's this little eye icon in VividCharts that I can click and see a quick screenshot example of the chart and also get a few example use cases and a description for what the chart is useful for. So these are all in here to help inform your chart selection when you're building a report. but there's a lot of charts available. So it does take a little bit of time to get familiar with the library and get a sense of which charts are best to answer what types of questions. So let's build one of these out. I'll select our percentage vertical time bar chart. And the first thing I'm presented with is what data source do I want to choose for my chart? And for this, we're going to use that same task SLA table. So we'll choose table as our data source. And in our search here, we're going to search for task SLA. Make that selection and click save. And just like with our percentage score chart, we have two sets of conditions for our numerator and denominator up here. So if we wanted to, for instance, show the percentage of SLAs that we've, or our SLA hit rate that we had on the previous slide, but see that as a trend over a period of time, we could add a similar set of conditions that we had before. So we'll search for that has breached field, select that. And we want to see the hit rate, so we want that to be false. So SLAs that have not breached. And the next thing we'll add is, let's say we just wanted to see this SLA data, but just for the incident tasks. For that, we could go and search and just kind of scroll through and see if we have a type. We don't have that on the task SLA table, but we do have it on the task table. So if I search for task here, you'll see I have the ability to dot walk to the task table here. And from the task table, I can isolate specific task types. So if I choose the task type field, I get a drop down of all the different record types or task types that we can run this report against or condition the report for. So if I wanted to do this for just incident, I can make that selection here. And then down below, we don't want to strip out the SLAs that have breached. So we would just want to, and we could do this with the shortcut, copy the query, paste it in there, and then just take that breached condition off. So we have our condition set up here. The next thing we'd want to do is look down below at these chart options and just assess the type of trend we want to look at. So let's say we wanted to trend this by month. We want to look at a certain date field. So let's trend this off of the created on field. And then we want to look at a specific date range. So you'll see if we scroll down, there's a lot of different options here, but let's look at, for this example, the last 2 years. And one other thing that's nice in here, we're looking at a standard calendar. So that's just January through December. But if you have a different fiscal calendar built into your instance, you also have the ability to toggle that to trend off of your fiscal period calendar type. And we can make this one clickable as well. And we'll click save. And so that's going to drop our chart onto the screen here. So we can use the drag and drop to resize it and make it a little bit bigger. And then if we go into the style menu, you'll see since I've chosen a different chart, I have a lot of different style options available here. And the first thing we probably want to do is come into the data labels and just show those values. So that's going to show the percentage for each of these bars. So that's our hit rate. But one of the things we also might want to do, that's a lot of decimal points. So we can use this number formatting function down here. And that's useful for formatting different types of data. If it's a currency that you want to round or put it in a time-based format. For this example, we'll just want to round that percentage out to make it nice and clean. And the other thing we might want to do just to make it a little bit more visible is change the size. So we could make those size 24, we could bold them, etc., just to make the chart a little bit more readable. And you'll see we also have, on some of the other charts, the ability to conditionally color these bars. So if we wanted to add a similar threshold, if it's above, 80% or whatever it is, and conditionally color based on that, we could choose, a greater than the value, and we'll just do 60 for this. And let's say we want to make it green for that. And we'll just give it a title and click save. So Again, depending on the chart type, you'll have these different options available to conditionally style, adjust the title, etc. But that's a good example of a way we could look at a similar data set for our SLA percentages, but trended over time. And to round out ITSM, we're going to do one more or potentially two more trend charts here. So we'll keep this slide intact, but we want to add a new slide. And this is another nice thing in VividCharts. I could add a blank slide here, but you'll see I have the logo up here, our nice VividCharts V, and the style bar down below. If I wanted to just add a new slide, but have it include that styling, I have this saved as a slide template, and these can include charts as well. But if we just wanted to add a fresh slide that includes those same style elements, we could deploy it, and now we have a nice fresh slide to work off of here. All right. So another common, I guess, ITSM report that we're asked about is we want to show trending, but what if we want to show trending for data on multiple tables or data from the same table with different conditions applied? And for that type of report, we want to open up our chart menu. And anytime we want to do, multiple data sources on the same chart, we would search for this combination chart down here. So I've searched for combination. I'll make my selection, and the menu is going to look a little bit different for this chart type. So if I click Add Chart here, I'm going to get the option to select a different chart type. So we have vertical time bar. We could trend as a line or as an area chart. So for this example, we'll just do a vertical timed bar. So I have that selected, and I'll see a pencil icon here. So if I click that, it'll take me into the same flow as if I'm building a normal non-combination chart. So we'll choose table as our data source. And let's say we want to see a trend of the incidents opened and resolved over a certain period of time. So we'll search for the incident table, make that selection, click Save. And then we'll get presented with the same, set of options here, our condition builder that we can select from, as well as our chart options to select our trend type. So let's say we want to trend this by, let's do this one by quarter. And for the date range, maybe we want to look at a longer period of time. So let's look at the last 3 years for this example. And then the date field we want to key off of, remember we want to put created on and resolved. So let's start with created on. And then we'll make this clickable. And we'll click Save. So you'll see I still have the ability to add another chart or a data source here. My chart hasn't built, but if I click Save, I could at least see the trended data for what I've built so far. But if I wanted to add another table or another set of conditions on a data source there, I could open up our data menu again here, click Add Chart. We'll do another vertical timed bar, click the pencil icon, and we're going to use the same table, the incident table, but this time we're going to show resolved compared to created. So you'll notice these are set in stone. So we're working off of the same calendar, the same trend type, and the same date range here. But for this, we just want to show resolved. So we can see resolved compared to created in each time period. So we'll click Save and Save. And now we've got 2 bars, and looks like we don't have data for all of these periods, but we can see a bar for created and a bar for resolved for each of those time periods. Now, if we open up the style menu, it's going to look a little bit different for the combination chart here. And again, usually where we want to start is just put the data values on there. Maybe we want to make them bold to make it a little bit more readable. And let's stretch the chart out a little bit here. So we're seeing 2 values, but we might also want to add a legend down below so we know which color is looking at created on and which is looking at resolved. And you'll notice those labels aren't very end user friendly for who's going to actually be viewing the report. So we could actually create our own labels here. So we could call this one created and this one resolved. And maybe we want to make those a little bit bigger, make them 20, and we'll bold those as well. Now in these trend charts, again, there's a lot of different chart options here. And you'll also notice there's some options that are specific to the two data sources here. So if we click the arrow key here, you'll see we have the ability to put, like a linear regression line on there if that's useful, and different style elements for the chart to add a different border or a different chart message if there's either an error or there's no data retrieved. So with this same combination chart flow, we could add, other data sources on here if we want to see, P1 incidents compared to the count of emergency changes in a given period. That's another good example of where we might want to use a combination chart. So a lot of good useful functionality there for layering multiple data sources on top of one another. All right, so we spent a good amount of time on ITSM. What we're going to do now is pivot over into SPM. So I'm going to click the back arrow here. And we'll click it again. And that's going to take us back to our collection. And we'll jump into our SPM example here to spend some time there. So we've got the same title slide, but for this one, I don't have anything built yet. So we're going to build a few charts from scratch here. And it's going to be focused on variance, and in particular on cost variance and duration variance for projects that we've completed. And we're going to use some of the same charts in the library, but some are going to be new and showcase some of the other capabilities we have to answer questions with our data. So let's start by saying we want to look at the average variance for planned versus actuals cost. So I'm going to add a chart here. And for this one, we're going to start with just putting a standard score chart out there. And for our data source, we're going to look for the project table. So we'll click Save. And this is where we'll start to use some of the different aggregate types. So we don't want to look at the count of projects. We want to look at the average, and we want to isolate the total planned cost field here, and we'll make that clickable as well. So once we click Save, we'll see we have a value in here, but if we open up the style menu, we know the cost is going to be a currency. So we could come in here really quick and just toggle the currency toggle, and that's going to present it in dollars for us. And then the other thing we probably want to do is just give this a quick name. So we'll call this average planned cost. The next thing we're going to want to do is add another score chart and put the average actual cost. So we're going to choose the score again. We'll go to the same project table, click Save. We want to do an average again. And for this, we want to isolate the actual cost. And we'll make that clickable and click Save. And we'll do the same thing in the style menu. So we'll come in and just make sure that's presenting as a currency. And we'll call this average actual cost. So those are pretty straightforward charts, but if we want to start to look at the average or maybe a percentage variance, we'll start to use some of the other charts. The first one is going to be the percentage chart. So we'll look at a percentage variance. So we'll choose our percentage score, choose our data source, and again, we're going to go to the project table, click Save. And we want to just look at all projects. You could add a condition in here to only show completed projects, or something we might want to do also is once we've built this out, we could add a filter to filter the charts against a specific portfolio or program. But for this chart, let's keep it showing all projects just to start. And then we're going to want to look at the average. And the aggregate field will be the actual cost. And then we're going to look at the average plan cost. And we'll make that clickable and click save. So now we're looking at, we have the values for the average plan cost for all of our projects, the average actual cost, and the average percentage variance. So we'll come in and add that title, average percentage variance. So that's useful, but we might also want to see what's the actual value in variance that we're looking at. If it's a percentage of 19%, what does that translate to in terms of dollars? And that's not a value you can get with a standard score chart, but you can calculate it. So this is one of the charts we've added to our library just based on customer demand here. So you'll see in the score chart category, I have a calculated score option. So let's choose that. And we can actually build a calculation to give us that value. So I'll go to our project table, click save. And you'll see the conditions are similar to the percentage score chart, but in the chart options, we have a new option available down here for an operator. So if we want to do the variance, we'll change that to be a subtraction operator. And we're working off of averages with the rest of our charts. We'll change both of these to average. And we want to do the, oops, total plan costs and subtract the average actual costs. And click save. And just like with our score, that's going to show up as a value, but we can come in and toggle the percentage. So now we're seeing the average cost variance in addition to the percentage variance here. So let's go ahead and give that a name. Average project cost variance. So this could be useful to look at all of our projects in more of an average or aggregate form. But if we're doing sort of a postpartum on a given quarter or a fiscal year where we want to look at the averages, but also the variance for individual projects themselves. One of the other things we might want to add is a list chart that gives us a list of projects and shows us the variance in dollars for each of them. So if I open up our chart menu here, we can search for the list chart, and you can see there's a few different list charts available. Some of these are specific to SPM. So our RIDAC list is going to put risks, issues, decisions, actions, changes in the same list. SPM is going to put ideas, demands, and projects in the same list. But for our variance, we're just going to use a standard list chart, but we're going to do something a little bit unique here. So again, we're going to be just looking for the project table. We'll click save. And for our sort by, we can just sort this by the project name. And for a list chart, we have the option to choose which columns we want displayed. So if we're looking at cost variance, and we want to see it at the individual project level, we definitely want to see the project name. And we want to see the planned cost as well as the actual cost. Now, if I go to add a field here and I search for variance, I don't have a field available on the project record that's going to calculate that for me. But what we can do in the VividCharts list chart is just add an empty column here and do a calculated column using our style menu. So I'm going to add a column here and just leave it blank. Click save. And we'll make this clickable. We want click to sort headers. And if we export this to PDF or PowerPoint, we do want it to paginate. So we'll choose those options, click save. And so we see our list chart here, but one thing you'll notice is some of these don't have a total plan cost or a total actual. So we might want to add a condition to only show closed projects because we know they would be populated on those. Or since we're in a demo instance, we could just add a condition for our total plan cost. And let's say we want to make it greater than 0 and our actual cost greater than 0 as well. So that's just going to ensure we're only looking at projects that have a defined plan cost and actual cost. but we don't have our variance in there yet. So with the list chart, when I've added an empty column here, which you can see a little bit on the right-hand side of the chart, when I open up our style menu here, I can go into this column calculations option and select that empty column, so column 4, and we'll title this variance. And then the selections down here is where we actually build what we want to calculate or how we want to calculate variance. So we'll choose our planned cost. We'll do the subtraction operator and subtract the actual cost. Click Save, and you'll see we have a derived or calculated column now displaying in our chart. But just like the score charts, we're not seeing this as a dollar value. So one of the other things we can do in the list chart is actually format either all of the columns or specific columns. So we'll just title this dollar formatting. We're going to select all of the columns that are showing currencies. Now you could conditionally apply this based on the data, but for this, we want to apply this style to all of the rows. And we just want to toggle and make this a currency and click Save. Awesome. So now we have up top, we have our charts giving us averages in terms of the planned cost, actual cost, percentage variance, and cost variance. But we can also look in a little bit more granular level and see for the closed projects, what was the variance for each of these projects specifically that are driving these numbers up or down. Excellent. So within SPM, we've covered variance from a cost perspective, but one of the other things we like to do as a PMO in a post-mortem or looking back at a period or closed projects in a given period is look at the duration variance or the variance in between the planned end date versus the actual end date. So we can use this same concept with these averages in the score charts up top as well as the list, but apply it to a duration as well. So I'm going to come in here and we'll just add a fresh slide. And we'll build one more chart using a duration calculation. So I'm going to search for the list chart here. I'm going to go to Table. And I'll select Project. Click Save. And we'll again sort this by the project name. And then for our column fields on this one, we definitely want to have the name again. And since we're going to do a calculation off of 2 dates, and we want to see the difference between the planned end versus the actual end to see the variance on that, we'll search for our planned end date. Actually, we should do planned start, and then we'll do planned end. And again, we're going to add an empty column here. So we'll click Save, make it clickable, paginate, and click to sort headers and click Save. All right. So now, just like with the previous list chart, we're seeing an empty column here, and we can use that same style function to do a calculation to give us the difference between the planned end and the planned. Oh, it looks like I chose planned start. That's not what we wanted. We want planned end, and we want the actual end. So we'll update that. And you can see we don't have an actual end on all of the projects in the list. So let's come in and add a condition for actual end. And we'll just say is not empty. All right, so now we have some good data to work with. We can run a similar column calculation here and choose our empty column number 4. And we'll call this end date variance. And we just want to take the difference, so subtraction calculation between the planned end and the actual end. So we'll click Save. And we'll get that formatted in a duration here. And that one actually just works right out of the gates. It looks like some of these have the exact same planned end and actual end dates, but for the one in here or two in here that we're seeing a difference between those, we can easily isolate what was the variance between the planned end and the actual end. And again, not a field that lives on the table in ServiceNow, but very useful to look at in the rearview mirror for PMOs to just easily identify what were the problem projects where we had slippage in terms of the schedule. All right, and we got 8 minutes left. I am seeing a number of questions in the chat. So what I'm going to do is flip over back into the slides, and then we'll get to the questions at the very end. I do want to just call out a couple of resources or potential next steps coming out of today. The first is from a product perspective. We did the workshop today in the VividCharts product. So if there were certain pieces of the product that were interesting to you and you want to see a demo that's more tailored to a use case specific to your organization, from our website, you can just book a demo with me directly, and I'll show you the link and where you can do that. We can discuss your use case and put together a more tailored demo that aligns to your reporter use case. Secondly, if you're more interested in additional training or reporting services, we've rolled out a number of these, including a reporting as a service offering. We're helping a lot of customers out there with their migration to platform analytics. So ServiceNow reports and dashboards got reinvented in a new workspace experience. And with the Z release, so the back half of next year, everything's going to be migrated over. So that's a pretty large effort. So we're helping customers out with that. So if you're interested there, you could book a consult with us. We also just offer bespoke training and reporting support services for our customers. So if you're interested more in the resourcing or services side of things, you can use the same link to book a consult with us. And lastly, on our website, we have a number of past webinars with current customers, workshops like you saw today, guides and case studies available. So if I just click over here and go to the VividCharts website, if you want to book a consult, you can just click this Let's Talk button, and you can book time on my calendar directly there. And then if you're interested in the resources, you can just hover over that and find case studies, guides, webinars. One we just put out was this VividCharts overview of the upcoming shift to platform analytics. So that's a really good resource if that's something that your organization has started to look at. All right, and with the last couple minutes here, we'll go to the Q&A section. We'll try and work through each of these. If we don't get to your question, I'll make sure we make a note of it and get a follow-up with you via email or on a call. So we'll just start to look through some of these. Any known impacts of this experience with the adoption of platform analytics workspaces? VividCharts is totally separate from ServiceNow reports and dashboards, which is the current tool set. And then the future tool set is the platform analytics experience. So nothing that's built in VividCharts gets impacted through that transition whatsoever. Everything stays the same within our product. But it is an area we're helping customers with to either audit and clean up their reports and dashboards, or to help with testing or end user training and support when you do actually migrate. Which release of ServiceNow are you utilizing behind the VividCharts plugin? So really quick and easy way to look at that if you're in the VividCharts app. Oh, sorry. And click this user and version. I can see I'm on the Orb 1.9 release of VividCharts, and I'm on Xanadu for the ServiceNow instance. All right, another question. Can you change the order of your filter conditions easily? That is not something that's in there, but that is a good request. So we'll make a note of that and we'll submit that to our product team because that is a good request. Will you provide some information about the license model? So we won't do that on this webinar, but that's something we could do in a 10-minute call if you want to schedule a follow-up, and we could also coordinate maybe a more tailored demo to your organization. So happy to provide more information on that, and we can do that outside of the webinar. All right. If you have time, can you talk about DB views? Oh gosh, sorry, Ken, we didn't get to that in time, but we will make a note of that, and that's maybe a follow-up session we could have with you. Follow-up to the previous question, has the instance been migrated to Platform Analytics, or is it still using the core UI? Will the migration affect the VividCharts interaction being demonstrated? The migration does not affect anything that you saw in the VividCharts app today. We do have Platform Analytics live in this instance, but we also have reports and dashboards live, since that forced migration hasn't arrived yet, but that will be with the Z release. What is the impact of VividCharts calculated fields in terms of performance to the system, similar to ServiceNow calculated fields? So it depends. I guess the short answer is it depends on the volume of data and the type of calculation and like the number of records it's being run against. So it depends a little bit for what you saw today. But one thing we didn't show today is another product of ours called VividSheets that was really built to better handle more formulas and calculations on ServiceNow data. So there is some content out about that and available on our YouTube channel or on the resources page of our website. So that could be another avenue if we do see a performance impact, if it's like a really large list view. So there's a lot of options around calculated fields. How do we get the view that you are using in our instance? Great question. I actually have, well, the SLA performance card I have packaged up as an update set. So that's easily transferable. So if you're interested in a VividCharts customer, we could definitely provide that for you. And really anything that we show in our demos is easy to package up and migrate over to our customers. All right. Can conditional formatting be set for multiple levels? Red, yellow, green? Yes. I don't know if I have an example of that on hand, but that's really common in SPM. Like if you want to condition a list view and style or color a cell red, yellow, green based on the status, you can absolutely do that with the same conditional styling that we used in that menu. Amazing. I think we got through all of the questions just in time. And again, just really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us for today's workshop. We will be distributing the recording for the session. And if there were items you dropped in the Q&A that we'll follow up on more specifically, we'll do that as well. And any other questions, feel free to use those resources and book a consult or a demo with us. With that, we'll go ahead and close things out for today. But again, really appreciate everyone's time and have a great rest of your afternoon.